right in everything you said, except I don't think that Alabama should leave the SEC. First of all, SMU is in the playoffs. Do you know why? Because they beat Duke. They beat Duke, not Mike Krzyzewski in basketball, but they beat Duke in football. That is their card. That's how they got in. As far as your other question, it really is an important question, Joe, because right now I feel very comfortable that the head of the SEC and the head of the Big Ten are having very serious conversations. These two men control college football. And the only, I'm not going to give you a long explanation, but the only reason we have this playoff today is because other commissioners tried to torpedo it after Oklahoma and Texas entered the SEC. They threw a fit. They tried to block the 12-team playoff that had already been announced. So they had to compromise. You understand that. They made a deal for this year. It won't look the same next year. And when the TV contract runs out at the end of 25, it will look dramatically different. It has to be seeded. And if it's seeded correctly, Alabama is in, and SMU is doing whatever SMU does this time of the year.
You know, it seems to me that, you know, Pablo, when you have these ESPN shows that talk about it, and Booger comes on and he talks about how Nutley High School's JV team went 12-0, so they should deserve to be in. The big lie that this is all based on is that all conferences are created equal, right? So the SMU, SMU deserves it because they got to the ACC Conference Championship. Clemson deserves it because they won the ACC. Now, let me give everybody a little stat. Let me ask you, Pablo, over the past 25 years, how many national championships do you think the SEC has won?
So I looked it up, and I know over the last 20, the SEC has had 10 champions or finalists. Champions or runner-ups, which is a crazy stat. But what do you got? What's your number?
I've got, and I'm counting Texas now, who won in 2005.
Okay. I see what's happening. The coalition
No. This is the only win. 20 out of 25 national championships this century have been SEC teams, whether it's Auburn or Florida or Alabama or LSU, Texas in 2005, who, of course, were in the Southwest Conference. But I'm just saying, this lie that the committee holds up and that Booger McFarland holds up every year, all conferences are created equal, just an absolute joke. And it means fans don't get to see the best teams.
Yeah, Paul's got something. Paul, what you got?
And Joe, one more thing. After Texas beats Clemson in 2 weeks, do you know what Clemson's record will be in the SEC this year? It will be 0-3 because Clemson lost to Georgia on the opening weekend, 34-3. They lost to South Carolina, which is in the second tier of the SEC, trying to get to the first tier, on their home field, Joe, and you know they're going to lose to Texas. So that's the comparison. It's going to be right there for America to see that the representative of the ACC will likely, almost positively, be 0-3 against the best conference. That's how ridiculous this really is.
And here's where I agree with you, Joe, as much as I do detect a distinct whiff of the Alabama Tuscaloosa cabal trying to orchestrate a better future for its citizens. This is a 12-team field for the first time. I just want to reiterate that. It is a success on the level of, look at all of the Sturm und Drang, I believe they say in Germany, about the 12th spot, right? So the whole idea at the outset was, this is going to be boring, everyone's just going to get in, whatever. And meanwhile, here you have a dream scenario for everybody not in the SEC. You have Alabama and its constituency saying, how dare you leave out the biggest, baddest team in the history of college football, because they were fighting for that last spot, and because this coalition, this rainbow coalition of conferences, decided to enshrine collectively the ACC championship game. And so Paul is right. In the near future, you will see a two-party system, Big Ten and SEC, threaten to take their ball and go home, because when it comes to the business of this, what is a shame for me, as somebody who enjoys watching the emotional roller coaster, the emotional wooden roller coaster that tends to be Alabama, is that I can't. You guys are going to be in the ReliaQuest Bowl, which I'm reliably informed is a real thing. You'll play Michigan in that. Good luck, have fun. It would be more fun if Alabama was, you know, in the dance, in the big one, as always.
Because, and again, it's not because of brand. It's not because of conference. Alabama beat Georgia.
That's true.
Alabama beat South Carolina, which Clemson lost to.
Also
Alabama
lost to
beat Mizzou badly.
And Oklahoma.
Yeah, you know why? Because you go through the SEC schedule and you get the hell beaten out of you week after week after week after week. If we were playing Duke, I'm serious, Duke, and then Wake Forest, and then Louisville, and then Oklahoma.
Okay.
Our players would be smoking cigars at halftime. I mean, that's just the way it is. But this is, I'm going to leave it at this, and then we got to go. Mm-hmm. All I want is a merit-based system. And this is not about a two-party system or anything. Paul, all I want the playoffs in college football to look like is March Madness, where you've got, who are the 4 best teams, and you know that they're going to be the ones that are number 1 in their bracket. If that were the case here, and then you do it the number 2s that way, and the number 3s and the number 4s that way, there'd be no problem here. You actually do it based on merit.
Well, the only good news is this is so bad that it will get better, and I feel very confident in reporting to you. They're working on it as we speak. But we're stuck with it this year. It's still better than it was, Joe. You and I remember when the polls used to pick it, and you might have 2 or 3 different champions. So it's great improvement. But this idea of Little League Baseball, of giving everyone a trophy, and that's essentially what they did to SMU on Saturday night. They were getting blown out. They made this heroic comeback, and this committee is watching this all together at a 5-star resort outside of Dallas, and they all go, we can't deny SMU, and the SMU coach said it would be criminal if they left them out. It's actually criminal that they let them in.
So we have buried
really
the lead. We have buried the lead.
Oh, we don't have to get to this necessarily.
The lead in this sports
we
section.
don't need to cover this.
Pablo Torre, briefly, Juan Soto signs a record $765 million contract with the New York Mets. And it's not just that he chose the Mets over the Yankees.
Yeah.
He left the Yankees to sign with the Mets. It is a new era in New York baseball.
Yeah, this is the largest contract in the history of sports, bigger than Leo Messi, Patrick Mahomes, anybody on the planet. I have never seen this. I'm a little shaken, John. The Yankees.
I'm enjoying that.
I am noticing your Schadenfreude, to just keep on using the German here today. It's bad. It's bad. And Juan Soto, look, Steve Cohen, this is what happens. This is, if you fell asleep for 20 years and you woke up and you said, wait a minute, a guy is getting he's getting the GDP of Micronesia over 15 years to sign with the Mets. What the bleep is happening? Steve Cohen is one of the 100 richest men in the world. He's a billionaire, private equity guy, hedge fund guy, excuse me. Want to get that detail right. Steve Cohen has said, I have all of the money. I'm going all in. Whatever you thought George Steinbrenner was, the late, great George Steinbrenner, it's me now. I am him. I'm going to get this guy. And they did. And I haven't seen it like this. This is an embarrassment for the Yankees. And it's a problem because the Mets, as we know, had a miracle playoff run. And now they have all of the firepower that the Bronx used to. And it doesn't feel good.
Post of Pablo Torre finds out on Meadowlark Media. Pablo Torre and ESPN's Paul Feinbaum. Thank you both. So sad.
He looks like an Alabama fan from Op on Sunday. I'll tell you what, Mika heard some yelling and came running in. She thought Alabama made the playoffs.
The patience.
No, it was rough.
Very dark moment. Okay, thank you both very much. We're going to move on to news at 12 minutes past the hour. So we're following the very latest out of Syria, where rebel forces have captured Damascus, toppling the regime of President Bashar al-Assad and forcing him to flee to Russia. NBC News White House correspondent Ali Rafa has more on the Biden administration's response.
At long last, the Assad regime has fallen.
President Biden reacting to the fall of the Assad regime and quick military action in Syria.
Just today, U.S. forces conducted a dozen of precision strikes.
Those strikes hitting more than 75 ISIS targets, including camps, leaders, and operatives. The White House hoping to prevent a resurgence by the terror group in the region.
We're clear-eyed about the fact that ISIS will try to take advantage of any vacuum. We will not let that happen.
The president committing to protecting the roughly 900 U.S. troops he says will remain in the country, while offering a blueprint of future U.S. support.
I'll send senior officials from my administration to the region as well to establish a transition away from the Assad regime.
Despite this, the president expressing cautious optimism after the rebel takeover of Syria,
It's a moment of historic opportunity.
while making clear the country's future is still uncertain, acknowledging the connection between the rebels and terrorist groups.
Make no mistake, some of the rebel groups that took down Assad have their own grim record of terrorism and human rights abuses.
Mr. Biden also committing to securing the release of Austin Tice, an American journalist and Marine veteran kidnapped in Syria more than a decade ago.
We believe he's alive. We think we can get him back. We have to identify where he is.
Tice's family, who had criticized the Biden administration for not doing more, hopeful fall of the Assad regime creates an opportunity to bring Austin home.
We are hopefully and prayerfully and joyfully waiting to get the news that Austin is walking free today.
Whew. All right, let's bring in Chief White House Correspondent for the New York Times, Peter Baker, former Chief of Staff at the CIA and Department of Defense, Jeremy Bash, staff writer at The Atlantic, David Frum joins us, and host of the show Amen on MSNBC, Ayman Mohyeldin. Good to have you all on board this morning.
Peter, let's start with you. What is the White House saying this morning, and what are they planning to do to influence these tumultuous movement in Syria and across the Middle East right now?
Well, this is a tricky situation, I think, for President Biden and the administration. Obviously, lots of celebration that Assad is gone. His family ruled with an iron fist for half a century. Nobody is shedding any tears for him today. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the people who come after him are going to be Jeffersonian Democrats. In fact, the main rebel group here was once an affiliate of al-Qaeda, is still on the State Department terrorist list. So the trick for the administration is deciding how do you engage with a group that you consider to be terrorists, and if so, how, what's the best way to do it? Now, the administration has been sending messages back and forth now to the Syrian rebel groups in recent days, using the Turks as intermediaries. The main thrust of those messages have been, as you take over, do not involve ISIS. Do not bring the Islamic State into your coalition. And they've been reassured by messages back saying, no, we're not going to do that. That's the main concern of the American policymakers at this point, not to allow ISIS to regain some traction in the vacuum that's following the deposing of Assad. But that doesn't necessarily mean that these new rebel groups are, going to be America's friends or going to be able to assert, real control over the country and create a better society. That's certainly the hope. Biden, you heard him say in that speech yesterday at the White House that they're willing to at least have an open mind about it. But the, U.S. policymakers are trying to figure out who are these guys taking over and can we work with them?
And Ayman, you've reported from Syria and the region for a very long time. I was comparing this to the shock that so many of us felt back in 1989, when you were too young, of course, but I can remember it, when one Warsaw Pact state after another just collapsed. And, a day at a time, we started reading these stories about a week ago, and no one could have imagined that a bloody 14-year civil war that cost 500,000 lives would be over in a matter of a week. But it was. Why?
That's a great question. And I think the people that I've been speaking to say that all of the major players in the region who backed these rebels, and including some in the United States, keep in mind this coalition of rebels, and we are focusing on mostly those that are, as they are known, HTS, that are the more hardline ones. There are others that the U.S.